It's Rich. First thing in the morning. Thank you. At this point, let me archive this one more time. Okay? This is exactly what happened down here. I got my help from the United Way, completely unfamiliar down here. And I made a general inquiry. I did a little research. I didn't understand it. U.S. Department of Labor, Education, Justice. Boom. Piece of cake. General inquiry. And you know what? Right off the bat, goal was to falsify those medical records, Alan Markowitz, without any question. Without any question. They're not very smart either, because when I met with Michael Quinn and all of the experience, it's been bits and pieces. I've got scattered all over the place in 100 videos, okay? Along with the hard copy files to exactly reconstruct the date. But the truth is, to have that become an incorporated norm, where A is A, but it becomes B and C and D, as ulterior motives, is of the most serious nature. I have documented the end result of falsified medical records. And he clearly told me, I've got such a case built against you, you'll never receive services. He admitted that. Outright falsified medical records submitted to the PhDs and masters. But see, then, I would say at that point, it would have been Graham Sisson, and he thought definitely I was a sonority. And he said, oh, no way, is anyone going to get around that? Not that smart, you see? I was able to, I don't use psychology, nor subliminal. It's my verbal communication skills consistent with my career history. And he thought I was a sonority. He didn't know who I was. But my verbal communication skills was obviously caught that blind area. I drove it up to Jim Carton, the absolute highest level of expertise for correction. And what does he do? He further commits psychological malpractice is what he began doing. And he had Rachel Hughes come up to absolutely make sure that those medical records were falsified. I have to honestly say that. Now, I could never believe I would be saying that back in 2005. And I never once committed a disorder. They had already created them, making me appear that I'm an invalid. That was intentional. I wouldn't believe I'm saying that today. I then fooled around with Stephen K. Simpson and asked for that background. Oh, Rachel Hughes guaranteed me I am definitely that way. You see, I'm able to prove psychological malpractice right there. It's yes, Rachel Hughes, and forget about it as far as any legal representation. That's completely corrupt. Not one single person would listen. Up to this point, nobody has been able to hear I was simply seeking a PhD in vocational psychology. They're too busy falsifying the medical records. Yeah, that's the honest truth. Honestly, certainly as of today, October 18th, absolutely, after reviewing this. And then Jim Carden referred me on to Stephen K. Simpson and Jim Harris III, who continued to falsify the medical records, physiologically and the psychological malpractice, for sure, for sure. And I clearly was seeking, those civil rights of mine have been completely violated, completely. This is people assuming with ulterior motives that they're acting on all of this just because I mentioned entrepreneur. That's it. As an entrepreneur, I gained the highest level of expertise and very valuable career experience, and that's all I'm seeking is a PhD. Okay, I didn't do anything. I never did commit a psychological disorder. I expected a full disclosure of the U.S. Department of Labor, Education, Justice. All of what followed had nothing to do with me. I never did commit a psychological disorder, but that's all they've done. That's all they've done. And finally, after a very dizzying array of trying, you expected a full disclosure and a correction, non-existent. They continue with the medical records. They didn't stop. It ultimately came out to be that I was going to file a discrimination report or whatever it is for the U.S. Department of Labor and Justice. But the easier route and the most immediate was with the U.S. Department of Education. Again, professional career counseling, that's it. Here it is, Yankee the Human Studies professor from the university system. Now that is what Jim Harris III has done. And that is psychological malpractice. That is without any question. Without any question. And again, entrepreneur. Here's Stephen K. Simpson. I wasn't seeking that. I was seeking a PhD in vocational psychology. I'm able to prove this now. And I would have paid for a community college. I wasn't seeking the education. Not one, the negligence. No, it's not negligence. It's outright using every legal means to falsify medical records. They're not very smart. They're not very smart. There's no attention span. They're too busy getting back to falsifying medical records. And I went through that foolishness. You got it all documented on these videos. End result, was I able to get a PhD in vocational psychology? But I was led into a whole different incorporated norm. I've been through the whole thing out here where all of pastors and individual counseling escalate this wildly exaggerated. If you knew the background I came from, wipe it out. Out in Birmingham, it's gone. It's gone. It's being taught educationally. I'm sure there's quite a bit of God only knows between the pharmaceuticals and the medical. I've got to say that this is no match for either you or I in any manner. It could happen to anyone. Take that as a heed. You're hearing it firsthand. I've seen the whole thing of being told that my 40-year history is schizophrenia. I mean, I've been through now that was later. Initially it came back clean, no matter how much conflicting information you give me. So I'm not kidding when I say at the highest level of ethics, that falls into, these are extremely powerful special interests. See, I didn't know anything about this. I had to learn it, experience it, and grow. And what is the growth? I was completely naive. I had to learn it. I didn't know anything. They think they're going to get away with it? Well, I'm going to guarantee you where I come from on the Chicagoland North Shore, all of what happened is not a misunderstanding. It was intentionally falsifying those medical records without the slightest reservation. Take someone from the Chicagoland North Shore, bring them down here and try to get professional career counseling. They're too busy falsifying medical records. And that's outright psychological malpractice. I don't even question that at this point. How is it proven? I will tell you this much. I've gotten so much help. Every bit of it would be medical, but none of it is. The boundary violations, it's very self-evident. Very self-evident. I didn't put all my eggs in one basket, absolutely not. But this is written in law. It's a definite, very serious civil rights violation. Without any question, it's completely violating my civil rights. But it's much more than that. It is psychological malpractice. When I went through all of this, and I finally tried to say, please, can I get a PhD in vocational psychology? She documented a disorder. You can't get a PhD in vocational psychology. They have to be filming. They have to be, as they create those disorders, they remain completely transparent, non-existent, and they'll catch you. Now, I have no history of delusions. Oh, but down here, it's delusions completely on steroids. Never in Lake County, never. What I'm describing on the Chicagoland North Shore is outright psychological malpractice. And here I am now. I've gotten so much help. I can't find it though, can you? Is there a healthy economy for us to take expertise and experience and create any success? Now, believe me. I have no history of disorders. No. But I'm looking at the two. I'm trying to be politically correct, but I have to say it's felonies. These are felonies. This is commonplace. There is no value in correction or any truth. It's felonies being committed. And the maneuvers, all of that. It's the worst political environment, and I kid you not when I say you're transformed without even knowing it. I didn't know about anything like this. I couldn't believe anything like psychological malpractice. The individual himself who committed it is when I continued to be in touch 3 times a year. How many times was it committed? They would assume right off the bat. No, you see, the negligence is so apparent. It wasn't a mistake. It's using the legal. That's all they're doing the whole time. A human studies professor, I don't even have a lousy hearing aid, God forbid, if that would even correct it. I am able to hear, fortunately, somewhat, but I am considered deaf in society. Complete civil rights violation. If anybody was 50, it proves that they were interested only in their own selfish agenda. He said right from the start, I've got such a case built up against you. He definitely falsified my medical records. Well, but those medical records with the human studies professor ordering MRIs and Jim Harris III, I don't even question that's as serious as it gets. Those medical records are like this. It makes me appear I'm an invalid. That is intentional. I didn't even know about maximizing performance for Jim Harris III being in a position like that. That is outright no immunity. None for Stephen K. Simpson, Jim Harris III, Pam Mobley. Graham Sisson, guaranteed, is fully familiar with whatever they've concocted here. Guaranteed. That's guaranteed. I caught that right off the bat. I caught that right. I was able to pick everything up on that phone call, and I'm able to pull all those memories back and look at the emotions and everything. I'm very fortunate to have that solid of a memory retention. That's because I've got so many decades of building on curiosity and learning how things work. 3 times a year. You got it all documented in the files here now, the whole history. Okay? It started either in 2007 with Jim Harris III 3 times a year. And boy, I caught a lot of blind areas of what's going on behind the scenes. This is, I would never have believed back then, falsifying medical records. I didn't know it until the very beginning of these series of videos. The first one I did, I could never have said. I guess I was tipped off in about January about psychological malpractice. Very evident. I spoke to your legal representation. It was very evident that the legal representation of ADAP, I don't know, I think it was about March. April, May, I can pull the exact date. It would have been February is when I reset the statute of limitation with Jim Harris III. So I'm guessing it would have been about May. It probably would have been about May when I contacted ADAP. And forget it. Forget it. Civil rights are completely violated. There is absolutely no legal representation down here. It's completely with the client assistant, Jim Carden. It's just a feeding farm. It's completely corrupt. It's all money pouring in. It's involving the university system, but see, you got people who have authority over that. The depths of corruption is absolutely psychological malpractice by anyone on the Chicagoland North Shore. There is so much help, medical, but absolutely none of this is medical. You've gotten to know me really well. I'm telling you, you can't get something as reasonable as professional career counseling. There is absolutely no correction. The medical records are falsified. The absolutely most serious form of psychological malpractice occurs routinely, I'm sure, with the poor individuals involved in this help. Is there any help to create any success or even resembling what the intended purpose is written in law? I understand that's felonies. That is intentional. That is intentional. That's the way they, as entrusted servants, they have absolutely no business to be in a position like that. None. There's a correction, exactly what the intended purpose is. But what's interesting here is I tried this now, okay? As you can look back on all the videos, this goes from initial trusted servant that obviously falsified the medical records for sure. He admitted it to me. He's not very smart. He said, I got such a case built up against you. I didn't understand that until just this week or two. He falsified the medical records. The end result, right there. And masters and PhDs, for sure, the end result of his absolutely falsified medical records, without any question. Without any question. I can prove it with what they documented. Okay? And it's obvious, as I mentioned, Mr. Graham Simpson, I was tipped off. That memory just sat there. It's 2004. It sat there. I was ready to refine it. I did it this week over all these videos I did. Yeah. I don't believe I'm ruminating there. I believe I'm pulling up a whole lifetime and further clarifying the very best I can today. That is not, I understand, it's very healthy to be able to do that. It's very healthy for me to be able to do this. When I look at this, that it goes all the way, then Graham Simpson, but see, he's a real seniority. He's the one. No one's going to get around this. You bet. Jim Carden, Jim Harris III, the commissioner, Bill Pryor. Look that substance up. Bill Pryor, the Senate completely opposed to it. There was did he on the second time Bill Pryor was submitted to the Senate? I can't say that the Senate opposed him, because I don't know the area of political science well enough to know for sure whether the Senate was opposed to it in 2003. But I can say that as far as any adversary or any of these groups that provide so much help to us, many nonprofits, things like that, and the whole sector of different areas in society, there was complete opposition, civil rights, and somehow tinkering with the highest level of health laws as far as the healthiest context, and exactly towards the intended purpose. God only knows what they've done. But I can say it goes all the way up to President Bush being slipped in. President Bush has tremendous presence in Alabama. You see, I walked in on the exact date. See, that's what's interesting. I don't know what happened in the past, but I know I came in 2004, tried to seek professional career counseling. That was it. Oh, a complete civil rights violation. I inquired, and it would have come out right off the bat. I was seeking a PhD in vocational psychology for professional career counseling. Not one single person knows anything about my background. What I'm able to do here now is I'm able to go back up north with all this help, because probably by what I can tell, the damage has already been done. I didn't know it. Did I injure myself? I can tell you that I certainly would never put all my eggs in one basket, but you're relying on a law. The trust is completely gone. I thought it was entrusted servants of Congress. Now it's of felons. All felons. All of them are felony. And the immunity is waived. For sure. For sure. The immunity is waived. The way to really prove it. I'm working by a concept now. Oh, I've been very severely injured. No. I didn't injure myself. I've been injured. For sure. I was naive. Okay, I was naive. I had to learn it and experience to actually understand it. Now, by staying down here, I'm going to continue to injure myself. What am I able to do? Go right back to what's true for over 40 years of my life. An absolute 100% survival. Okay? That will prove my actions are completely consistent. It proves the psychological malpractice. It proves it. All they're interested in is committing psychological malpractice. I head back up north, and there's no guarantee, but if I do have the experience, though, I have to prove myself, and I absolutely do promise you that if those resources up north come together to optimally incorporate me back to a perfectly normal, healthy lifestyle, earning a living again, oh, there's a tremendous amount of damage and harm that's been done to me. I didn't do that to myself. Knowingly naive. It shouldn't have made any difference with a couple of million population base. Unheard of. If I were to be put back and incorporated with that business experience that I just tried to get that PhD in vocational psychology, professional career counseling, and I were to be reincorporated optimally back along the old money Chicagoland North Shore, I guarantee you, I absolutely promise you, I would never exaggerate any of this. I am a business professional that would incorporate right back into the Chicagoland North Shore again. I'm estimating it could take 6 to 12 months. If that concept is optimum and achievable. Now, you look at that, and you're talking about a huge. This area of the South has not seen someone who is able to prove that. I'm sure psychological malpractice, it would be a huge exposure of corruption. I don't even question the seriousness. That is a huge exposure, and one of the most outstanding examples which anybody up north would consider that psychological malpractice. But the depths of someone coming from the Chicagoland North Shore, coming down here, learning about it, experiencing it, and growing from it, then make the transformation from someone who's homeless, falsified medical records, an invalid, barely able to stock shelves. It would be historic. I don't even question. There's no guarantee that concept will be achievable. I'm sure what has happened here, it's of the most serious form. This is of the most serious form of criminal activity that could possibly occur. The truth is, and you'll never change this about me. You'll never change. I can absolutely prove I'm a business professional. I have to demonstrate that expertise. It would be most helpful to have a PhD in vocational psychology. That's what all I've been seeking down here. Back up north, I don't know if that's even necessary because I'm already familiar with what's lifelong. Wipe it all out down here immediately. These entrusted servants, there is absolutely no correction. This is outright psychological malpractice without any question. This is of the most high level. You're hearing it firsthand from me. You're hearing it firsthand. You're talking about university professors. I would absolutely say I never, honestly, never did commit a psychological disorder. I never did. They create them, and they'll continue to create them. And they cover up their criminal activity of falsifying medical records by outright psychological malpractice. And I was never seeking, you see? It's even more reasonable than that. It can't be any more reasonable. All of what happened here is one of the most outstanding examples that I understand all equates to the incorporated norm of Chicagoland, North Shore, Lake County as psychological malpractice. For sure. Get me incorporated back in that Chicagoland, North Shore with that business experience, and I would transform right back to that incorporated norm. I'm estimating with the amount of harm that's occurred down here, with being completely financially wiped out, I mean completely. I've been brought down to my knees completely. But I can grow. I'll pick back up again. Exactly. It's absolute survival where I'm going to be. You bet. I would adapt right back in that Chicagoland North Shore. And you want to really build up a really historic legal case? Compare that, the difference between the two. I guarantee you, these southern states have not seen something like this in over quite a few decades. I absolutely promise that. This is really high-level substance here. Yes, it is. It went from all Graham Sisson. It's all in the earlier videos. Now, this has been something. I mean, if I would have been able to get that simplest request, and man, I did a lot of hard work, headhunters. I have really worked my tail off down here. It's one of the most significant challenges that should have been a piece of cake. And yet, look at the end result. Everything's been taken away from me by special interest and definitely the political environment with the direct individual. I am being 100% on. Look, I come from the top business leaders, practically the nation. I'm used to relating to them in the healthiest context, creating success. I'm used to be interacting with very successful people, not a feeding farm of a bunch of medical and felons. It goes all the way up at the highest level. I've never had a person with anything politically incorrect. Never. So you got a first-hand, oh yes, this is of the most, my civil rights definitely have been violated completely. The request you made, when you look at how reasonable that was, they falsified the medical records. They committed psychological malpractice. It's absolutely impossible to get a PhD in vocational psychology and some professional career counseling. I think that would have been the very first individual, and then when it's brought up to who is complete felons. All of these are felonies. The immunity is waved out the window. Will that concept of what I've shared after, I am not a description of anyone that would fit homelessness, unheard of from the background I come from. Put the same person out here